Hello, everybody. Welcome to our show. It's a update on hate crimes in Fargo, North Dakota. We did a show on Monday, and this is a update from that timeline. I'd like you to share this out, get some people watching this. We are broadcasting on YouTube at Duke1517, Facebook at 88.1 Fargo Moorhead, on Twitch at A Mexican Crossing Lines, and we'll be on the air at 10 o'clock tonight on KPPP LP 88.1 Fargo Moorhead, adding local color to your airwaves. We're just going to take a few minutes to leave this music on and get people joining the stream. So don't be by yourself, join the stream.
Share the stream.
Share the stream.
Share it with your friends, invite people in. This is important information, an important update on a news report that we brought you about a hate crime in Fargo. We have important updates tonight about injuries and criminal charges.
Exactly. Also, if you'd like to leave us a message, you can call us at 701-566-0917. Again, at 701-566-0917. And that's our call-in line. You can also send an email to Cindy at kpppfm.com or me at Duke at kpppfm.com.
Nope, kpppfm.com.
Exactly.
With our names in front of it.
That's right. I think it's right there at the bottom right there, Duke at kpppfm.com.
Yeah, just...
You can also go to our website at kpppfm.com. Have a look around. If you'd like to support our work, you can make a donation at kpppfm.com/donate. We are a nonprofit organization. Main thing is we want this news to get out. We want you to share it. We want people to hear about it.
Follow us on all of our social media platforms at media_PPP on Twitter, Duke1517 on YouTube. You may be watching on YouTube now.
Yep, and on Twitch at A Mexican Crossing Lines.
Welcome everyone to Mexican Crossing Lines with your hosts, Cindy Gomez-Schempp.
And Duke Gomez-Schempp.
You're listening to 88.1 FM, KPPP LP Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. And tonight I am bringing you an important update on the hate crime that occurred here in Fargo against a group of black children. It involved more than one person. It was not just one person, as we have seen in almost all of the reports and all of the articles about this story. So first, let me update you with the original story. The original story was published 9 days ago, Duke, or
Yep.
The incident happened 9 days ago. The following day, about 8 days ago, news stories came out about this, and the mugshot of this gentleman was published publicly. And the story that has been put out about this incident is basically one where Larry Baldner, this is the man that you see on the screen, 73-year-old Larry Baldner, grabbed the one victim that they talk about in all of these stories, whose name is Tylia Cotton. Okay, there are 3 children in this family. A 13-month-old baby, Tylia, the victim that is talked about in these articles, and her older sister, Tyreen. They are 1 year apart. Tylia is 11. Tyreen is 12. Mom and dad have rallied behind their children. We spoke to and interviewed mom. This is a picture of Siru Cotton, mother to Tyreen, Tylia, and Tyasia. Here's a picture just of the 2 little girls that were involved in this incident. Tyreen and Tylia, both of whom are 1 year apart in age. I cannot stress this enough because these little children defended themselves from this attack, where Tylia, as the report indicates, the original report indicates, was grabbed by Larry Baldner. She was grabbed by her hair, by her neck. He restricted her airways for nearly 10 seconds. He effectively was choking her and lifted her partially off the ground. This is an incredible amount of force that was used against both of these little girls. Ripping one of her hair extension braids out of her hair. And we showed you the pictures of the braid, and I'll bring that up. But before I do, I want to add that originally when the story came out, Larry Baldner was charged on aggravated assault involving a victim of under the age of 12. There were 3 victims. A child by the name of Andre was spat on while being called racial slurs. This man, Larry Baldner, was hurling racial slurs and harassing a group of black children playing basketball. The other thing that he was charged with was preventing arrest and simple assault. Simple assault. Assault on one child. He is not charged with spitting on and hurling racial epithets against Andre. He is not charged with physically attacking, pulling the hair of, hurling racial epithets at the older sister, Tyreen. And as of today, we know that Tyreen also suffered a fractured nose during the incident. The first charge that he did get charged under, the aggravated assault charge involving a victim under the age of 12, is a Class B felony carrying up to 10 years in prison and a requirement to register as an offender against children. But there is more to this story. There is more witnesses, as you know. Both of the Cotton sisters were assaulted by Larry Baldner, not just the 11-year-old. And the damage to Tyreen, the older sister, which is completely left out of the charges, which was completely left out of the reports, which is completely left out of any news stories, is a serious fracture. It wasn't just the fact that he punched her, that he pulled her hair. He fractured her nose. There were multiple witnesses. The family has been trying since the day the police came out and took the initial report to get a copy of the police report from the police, to speak to the police again so that they could add information that they did not think of at the time that the police interviewed them originally, because A, they were in shock, and B, they still did not know that their daughter's nose was fractured at the time. Neither Terry nor Siru mentioned that the police offered to have a paramedic come to the scene to check the kids out, or even suggested that they should take them to the hospital to ensure that the children were okay. Isn't that something you would expect from an officer responding to a scene with a grown-ass man?
Yep, exactly. You would think so. You know, it would make total sense if an adult is beating up children, that you have to check out the children and see what sort of injuries they've had, or see if they're okay. Just don't totally ignore them.
One of these children was choked, lifted off of the ground. When the police arrived, they could see the hair extension that he had ripped out of her head. So we know that this was vicious. We know it was violent. But upon receiving counsel to do so, the family did go and get their kids checked out and learned that their daughter's nose is fractured, and tried to get a hold of the police officers on multiple occasions, going to 2 separate police stations and leaving numerous messages with the police. And they were not reached out to until today. Wow. Today, 9 days later, we have learned that Siru, not only Mama Siru, the mother of these two children that were the victims of a hate crime, she was not just calling the police departments, trying to get a hold of them, trying to bring in the hate crime form that has to be filled out by the police and by the family, the victims, in order to have this be charged as a hate crime under the city ordinance newly passed in May of 2021 in Fargo, but also to add the additional information about the fractured nose. But no one got back to her. No one was getting back to her. So she took directly to the prosecutor and saying, I have additional information that you need to have. And it was, according to the detective that spoke to the family today, to Siru, it was an email from the prosecutor's office that prompted him to come and request copies of the medical records for the police department and other legal law enforcement entities. Not her repeated requests for the return of the police and the addition of information to her police report. It was instead the prosecutor letting the police of Fargo know there's an additional bunch of information you need to collect. One of the things that really bothers me from reading all of the reports that came out and sort of the vacuum of silence that has lingered over a week later, where we haven't heard from city leadership. Police typically don't make public statements about these kinds of things, although I really think they should address them. In a city that's seen so many hate crimes for which there has been really no redress. But also, the fact that almost every single article that I read online seemed to indicate Larry Baldner is their neighbor. He lives right next door. The incident happened when he choked the neighbor. They don't specify that in this particular case, neighbor means white dude that lives somewhere on the street that they live on. Now, you don't typically think of, when you're reporting in a police report or in a news story, that Larry Baldner choked his neighbor. You don't immediately assume that that means that they live 4 houses down from him. Do you?
No, it's like you think of someone who's in the vicinity, basically.
Next door.
Yep. Pretty
Right
much.
next door.
Right next door, yes.
And you know how I know that everyone took it that way? Because if you read the comments of almost any of these stories, people ask the question, what were these kids doing on his property? Some articles also, without context and without explanation, seem to indicate Larry Baldner complaining about these kids being on his property. At no time during the incident in which Larry Baldner attacked all of these children were any of them anywhere near his property. None of them. Not a single child was anywhere near his property. Where they play in a joint driveway with their neighbor, who is not Larry Baldner, the children share a basketball hoop that they all play in that driveway, and that is where they routinely are playing. Not anywhere near Larry Baldner. And I think that this clarification is important and necessary, and that the media should do a better job. Because if every person that read this story online assumed that this man lives right next door and that they share the driveway, it takes a lot of onus and responsibility off of this white man for going and assaulting children that live nowhere near him. Also in the comments, a lot of people wanting to in some way excuse Baldner's behavior, made comments saying, this isn't an excuse of his behavior, but why were these kids arguing with him on his property? Because once again, the reporters in all of these stories failed to make it clear that this man does not live near these. He's not their neighbor. He is not their neighbor. This is not their neighbor. Their neighbor was one of the witnesses that saw the whole thing happen. That's their neighbor. Their other neighbor is the one that shares the driveway with them, that lets the kids play basketball there. That's a neighbor, but Larry Baldner is not. And here's a post that I want to show you from CRU when these stories came out that show that four homes away. There it is. She posted this on her Facebook page saying, this happened to my daughter Tylea on Tuesday. Much can't be said because our lawyer's handling this case. She is fine, Tylea is, but Tyreen has a fractured nose that at the time of posting this, even her parents didn't know about. And it goes on to say at the very end, she said, what is scary is this coward who preys on children of color lives 4 homes down our block. Okay? 4 homes down our block. This coward, as she called him, who preys upon children of color, lives 4 houses down the block. The media needs to do better. They did a disservice to this story and allowed the imagination of people who don't know any better to run away with them and make assumptions about where these kids were, that they were trespassing on his property. Not that they gave him an excuse to beat them, but that was all wrong. And I want to remind folks of what these children said, of what they themselves told me when I interviewed them on the day that I first did this report. Here's what they had to say about this assault.
I was going outside to play basketball, and then there's no one at my basketball hoop, and I heard the basketball bouncing, and I looked and I saw my friends, and I told them to come, and then I went to go get them, and then they told me so I went to go get my friends, and then my friends told me that, what's the man's name? That this man was being racist, and when my other friend fell and sprained his ankle, the man said "crybaby," and then I told the man, "Why are you being racist?" Because the man called us a nigger, and I told him to stop being racist. And when he saw me, he said he called me a nigger too. And then I got angry, and then he kept getting up all in my face, and I told him to get out my face, and then I got Tyree. When I was going to go play basketball, there was no one at my basketball hoop, and then I saw my friends, and then I told them, and then I went to go get them, and then they told me that this man was being racist and calling him a nigger, And when I said why are you being racist, he called me a nigger too. And then I went to go get Tyrene. Yeah. And then Tyrene came out. And then Tyrene, do you want to explain the story?
Yeah. Okay, so here. Sorry. So I was inside on my phone, and out of nowhere, my sister she just runs in the room, looking like she was about to cry, saying, "This old man is like attacking her, calling her racist slurs." So then I was like, "Who?" So I went outside, and when I went there, he was cussing out my friends. And then when I asked him why is he cussing out my friends, he said he started attacking me, calling us niggers, saying that our skin is the color of shit. And then whenever I asked him to stop, he got mad and he started calling me and my sister a hoe and a bitch, all those words. And then and then he started getting all up in my sister's face, and my sister was trying to back up, but he kept on following her.
No.
Yes?
No. So he got up all in my face, and I told him to get out of my face because spit was all going in my face, and I told him to get out of my face, and I kept saying that. And then he got angry, and he was about to slap me in the face. And then I said, touch me to see what happened. Touch me to see what happened. And I kept saying that. And then he touched me. Well, he didn't slap me. He grabbed me. Well, Tyrene pulled me behind her, and then the old man reached his arm and grabbed me by my neck and my hair, and the man started choking me, and I couldn't breathe, and I had asthma. And he took out my braid, and it hurt. And when he choked me, my and then my and then when he let go, my neck was hurting a lot, and my neck is still hurting.
He just came outside and like they were just playing basketball, and then my friend fell and he started crying, and he started going for my friend saying, "Stop crying, stop being a brat. If you're gonna be crying around here, then get out of this town and get out of this neighborhood," stuff like that. And then my friend asked if he could leave them alone, and then he just started talking more and started calling them niggers and stuff. He even spit on one of my friend's face. No, wait, well, every time we'll be walking down the sidewalk, he would just look at us, and sometimes he would be like, "Get off my property," but we would be walking on the sidewalk going. No, so he tried to hit my sister, but he was kind of drunk, so he kind of like fell, so I put my sister behind me so he wouldn't touch her, and he reached behind me, grabbed my sister, and started choking her. So then I told my friends, "Go get my dad, go get my dad." And so I was waiting for them, but they were taking a little too long, and my sister looked like she was kind of like out of breath. So then I striked him one time so he could let go of my sister, and then when he let go, I grabbed my sister and we tried to leave to go to my dad. And then he grabbed my sister again, and he grabbed me. He grabbed me by my hair, and then I like pushed him to the ground so he could like get away from us. And me and my sister we ran back home. So when I came out, he was like yelling at my neighbor Kevin in the car, and then he was like, "Oh, there's the bitch who was blah blah blah." No, he was like, "There's the bitch who was on my property." And then I was like, "They weren't on your property, they were on your neighbors." And he was like, "Yes, they were, and you weren't even there, you bitch, so I don't know what you're talking about." And then he was like, and then I was like, "Oh, will you shut up, please?" And then he was like, "You shut up, your skin color's the color of shit." And I was like, "Okay, and you don't, if you don't like people of color, just say that." And then he was like, "Shut up, no, he was like, you're a dirty hoe. Yeah, he said, shut up, you're a dirty hoe. And then he started getting all up in my sister's face, calling her a bitch, calling, no. So he walked up to my sister and he was like, you little bitch, keep on. I couldn't understand what he said, but he said, keep on. And he like sounded tipsy. He was just like, I know you ain't talking. You're a dirty bitch. No, he said you're a dirty hoe. But his eyes were like, he just looked slumped, and he was talking slowly. And yeah.
He called me a bitch, a slut, a whore, and
The N-word.
and the N-word, and he called me stupid, and then I kept getting mad, and he kept cursing at me, and then he kept saying it, and then I got angry, so I ran to my sister to get her, and then Tyrene came out, and that is when the whole when the whole thing started. Yeah, and sun's in my face, and I keep getting scared, and every time I go to sleep, I keep dreaming about the man choking me. And I always go to my mom's room and ask if I can sleep with her.
And I did ask her if she has PTSD-induced asthma attacks, anxiety-induced asthma attacks. I'm a lifelong asthmatic since I was a child, and many times stress, shock, PTSD, it will trigger an asthma attack. So this child will now have to get treatment for that. And I want to remind folks, this is very significant. Take a look at the driveway where the children play. You heard the children right now in this saying, my neighbor Kevin. Okay, that's a neighbor. The other neighbor is the neighbor that lets them play in the driveway. The man, Larry, when Tyrene showed up, according to Tyrene's statement, said that's the bee that was on my property. And then he was alleging that the children that you see playing here, this is 4 houses down the street, were on his property at some point. And she said, no, they weren't on your property. They were playing on our neighbor's driveway on his property. And he told her, shut up, B, you don't know, you weren't there. So he was continuously and drunkenly was making these allegations up about the children being on his property 4 houses away. It's also something that sticks out to me as I listen to this interview for a second time, that this little girl came upon a scene. She wanted to play basketball with her friends in her driveway.
Yeah.
She went looking for her friends, and she heard there was some kind of altercation going on. This man was calling them the N-word. This boy had fallen down. He was calling him a crybaby and making fun of him. You know what she saw? She saw a bully, Duke. And our kids today are taught how to deal with bullies in the schools, on television, in a way that we were never taught how to deal with bullies when we were kids.
Exactly.
And this brave little girl, she went over to this man and she said, why are you being a racist? At which point he started being racist toward her and threatening toward her. And she stood there as this man with spit flying out of his mouth was inches from her face, according to that witness neighbor that I spoke to. And she said to him, touch me and see what happens. Touch me and see what happens. She knew that this man wanted to get violent with her, but she stood her ground and she said, I have a right to be here. I have a right to play where I'm playing, and you don't have a right to interfere with that. Touch me and see what happens. And then he did.
Yeah.
He hit her. She ran. She got her sister. She came back. And the two of them, one 11, one 12-year-old, had to fight this man off as he hurled racial slurs at them, called them bees and called them hoes, and pulled their hair and choked them. And dear God, he fractured this child's nose. Take a look at the record for Tylea. I want to show you. These children have since received medical care. And it says she reported this assault. She's a victim of an assault. And of course, she was treated for that as well as her breathing issues. And Tyreen, you can see here, was treated for a fracture, a closed fracture of the nasal bone. That's what happened to her, in addition to the punching and the hair pulling and the name calling. This is aggravated assault times 2. There should be 2 counts of aggravated assault because there were 2 children assaulted seriously in this case. These 2 children weren't just pushed. This is not just a scrape and some hurt feelings.
Yeah.
Okay? This man choked off her airway, has given her PTSD that will probably shape her for life. She has anxiety-induced asthma attacks, and now she has to remember and relive this man choking her every night. And let me remind you, he pulled out her hair. He pulled out her braid. This is a picture of the braid he pulled out of her hair. And this is a picture of her head, at the back of her head, where he pulled it out. Do you know how much that must have hurt?
Oh, it must have really hurt.
To be picked up off of the ground by your hair and have that ripped out of your hair, and your 11-year-old child, by a grown-ass man, intoxicated on who knows what, because we still haven't been able to see the police report, because the family still hasn't been able to see the police report, because even though they've been asking to see the police report so they can verify that everything that's supposed to be in the police report got into the police report, and that all the witnesses that were there that saw the incident have been questioned so that their statements can be taken. Here we are 9 days later. They don't know.
Wow.
But we do know there's a lot of information missing from the court documents that have been filed with the charges. That's moving forward, even though police haven't finished their investigation, and even though a lot of information clearly is missing. And here's a picture of Tyreen's nose on the day of the incident, or the day of the interview that we did with her. At this time, in this photo, this child has a broken nose. Her mother reported to me that initially, after the incident, again, neither she nor the husband, Terry, said that the police brought paramedics to the scene, took the children to the hospital to be checked out, or even suggested that they do so. But upon receiving the counsel that she should take her children to get checked out, she did so. And she reported that Tyreen has seasonal allergies with sometimes some bloody noses that go along with it. So she thought that it might just be that, or that the pain that was coming from her nose, because she's got a swollen nose and it's painful, was likely due to being punched in the face by Larry Baldner. She did not, however, think that it was fractured or that it was severely fractured. And I want to make that distinction, because in some cases you can have your nose broken and you don't require or there isn't anything they can do medically. You just have to let it go down and the bleeding go down and the swelling go down and you move on with your life.
Yep.
In other cases, they have to set it. They set the nose and that fixes it. And usually that takes place right away. They can just set the nose. Have you seen in like boxing matches?
Boxing matches, I've seen that, yeah.
It's like, and they put it back in place. But when the fracture is too severe, they cannot just set it. And I know that this is the case because the medical records here indicate that she has a broken nose, that usually doctors can diagnose a broken nose by looking at it. An x-ray is rarely needed because you can just see it. Most people can just tell by looking at it, oh, your nose is broken. Now, after an injury of this type, the record goes on to say, the nose gets very swollen and painful, and whether or not the nasal bone is broken, if the nose looks out of place or crooked, a plastic surgeon may need to repair it. If the nose is broken but not crooked or out of place, no treatment is needed. It can take at least 2 weeks for the swelling to go down enough to be able to tell whether they needed surgery. And according to the conversation that Siru Cotton, the mother of these children, was able to have with police today, they requested the medical records, and she told them that the doctor was able to tell instantly when they walked in the room without examining the child, without the need for an x-ray, that her nose was visibly broken.
Wow.
Which she reported to the detective she spoke to today. In addition to the fact that he questioned whether or not this was fixed with setting the nose, to which she replied, no, they are going to do surgery. So she was told at this visit with her child, they're going to have to schedule surgery down the road once the bleeding and the swelling have subsided. So here we are. More than a week later, going into 2 weeks now.
Yep.
The family still hasn't been able to examine the police report. The first contact again with the police was today. And it wasn't prompted because of all of the phone calls and the repeated attempts that she's made to go to the police station to give the additional information, but instead because a prosecutor contacted this detective and told him, there's medical records that I need for charging in this case, and you need to go and collect them. So what happens now? I want to remind you all that this family are hardworking, tax-paying, business-owning citizens of our community. Here's their business, just in case you forgot. This is Pick-a-Bob. They smoke meats.
They smoke the best.
They say they smoke the best. I have not been able to try their delicious smoked meats, but I am told that they are indeed the best smoked meats. These people run a business, and also they have other jobs in addition to that business. These little children are good students and good athletes. Tylea is in a picture here with her gymnastics team. You'll notice she's the only black child on the gymnastics team. That hasn't stopped her from being a hard worker and a medal earner for this team. It hasn't stopped her in her life, but you could see how it impacted her psychologically to be called the N-word.
Yeah.
Go back and watch the interview with these children and see what that child's eyes and face do when she talks about being called the N-word. No child should go through that. I noticed in the comments of the stories when this came out initially that some people in this community are asking themselves the question that I'm asking. Why hasn't this been charged as a hate crime? Here's a comment from one of the people that posted on this, on one of these articles. Sounds like he should be charged with a hate crime, not just assault.
Yep.
I agree with you. I also think he should be charged with all of the assaults.
Yep.
He broke Tyrene's nose. That is a felony aggravated assault if I ever heard of one. If what he did to Tylea is a felony aggravated assault, what he did to Tyrene is a felony aggravated assault. And in addition to that, he will have to be registered as an offender of children for what he did. And let's not forget, he committed these crimes, these multiple crimes, while under the influence. And that has not appeared anywhere in any report of the police that we know of or in any story in the media. And there's something that, you know, it bothers me that this story has gotten such kind of meh, like low energy reaction from people in our community. It doesn't feel like there's been enough of a reaction, protests. This is a horrific crime, folks. I struggle to understand why there is such a silence from, key people in leadership that one would expect to be calling for the full weight of the law and justice to be served for this family. And that's what we're asking for at a Mexican Crossing Lines. And I want to leave you with this thought. One of the other comments that I noticed online was this one, speaking about Larry Baldner and saying that he has had violent issues before. I agree. You can't just go around choking people. Were the past violent issues involved choking? Is that what you're trying to say here? I don't know what this comment is trying to say. But what you heard from these children's mouths is that this man has previously accused them of being on his property when they're walking on the sidewalk and nowhere near him.
Exactly.
And he was doing that the day that this incident happened while he was drunk. And the media and the police, conveniently leaving out the fact that he was highly intoxicated on what we may never know, basically reported that he was saying, they were on my property, without checking, without verifying where this man lived, who the true neighbors of this family are, and simply reporting him as their neighbor. Larry Baldner is not this family's neighbor. And hopefully, justice will be served in their case. That's all I have for you tonight on this update. I'll be bringing you more news and more updates on this story and others. I will be doing a report coming up on the untimely passing of the head of Digital Smoke Signals, Myron Dewey. I know a lot of you have been sending me information about his passing and other stories. And once again, folks, reach out to us on social media, on our email, or on our call-in message line if there's a show topic or some tip that you want to leave for us here on a Mexican Crossing Lines. With your host, Cindy Gomez-Schempp.
And Duke Gomez-Schempp.
You've been listening to 88.1 FM KPP PLP Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. Good night, and God bless.